my first 7 years were spent in Faith, North Carolina, population 500. One of the best things that ever happened to me, to be in a very, very small town where nobody locked their doors. And, you know, after I was allowed to cross the street, which was later, you know, you could go anywhere all day long. But the most important thing was I was very close physically to my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and I was also, the bond between my grandmother and I was probably tied with the most influential bond of my life. So I got to grow up with her and learn from her. She probably got outside of Faith, North Carolina, maybe 4 times in her life, seriously, out of the county maybe. Okay, she was not educated. She, in the 6th grade, her brother died, so she had to go to work in a sock factory to help the family support itself. But she was Socrates. I mean, she was incredible. And some of the things that guide me every morning of my life at age were from her when I was 4 or 5 years old. I can tell you some stories about that, but they really do. It guides me to this day.
So at age 8, you moved?
Yeah, I went to Raleigh for a year and then back to Salisbury when my father started Food Lion. Yeah.
Okay. But it was an interesting time in the South, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Very interesting. And, you know, Mother blames when I grew up for everything that's wrong with me, but I blame it for everything that's right with me. But, you know, even at 4, I can remember my grandmother and I went to, I think it was a Woolworths, it was a 5 and 10, okay? And they had a colored and a white water fountain. And I could read, I was an early reader, and I said to my grandmother, what does that mean? Because, I mean, I knew what the word colored meant because it was pervasive back then. Yeah. And she said, what do you think that means? And I said, I think it means that they want white people to drink from that one and colored people to drink from that one. And she said, yeah, does that make sense to you? I said, no, that's stupid. And she said, yeah, it is. What are you going to do about it? And I'm 4, okay? What are you going to do about it? And she wasn't telling me either. And I went over and I drank from the water fountain. I said, water's good, water's good. She said, yep. And remember this, and the rest of your life, figure out what you're going to do about it. I'm telling you, this uneducated woman from Faith molded me. So you're talking about the petition, aren't you?
Well, I was going to get to it. You know, there's some stuff on the internet about your brother has shared about some of your early activism around Little League. I was going to ask you, what I ask everybody is, did you play sports? You know, did you take on leadership positions in school? You know, obviously sports was important.
I loved sports, and I was the best pitcher in the town, but they wouldn't let me play Little League because girls couldn't play Little League and African Americans couldn't play Little League. Well, I warmed up all the teams pitching. I was a great pitcher. I really was. And then I had to sit down after the game, and I got no uniform. I wanted one of those uniforms so bad. I thought they were so cool. But I'd have to sit and watch. And this irritated me. And long before I knew what a petition was, because my parents weren't very political, and I didn't know what a petition was or how to do government or anything, I wrote the president a letter. President Eisenhower, that's how old I am, President Eisenhower. I wrote him a letter, and I said, you know, this just really isn't fair, and I'm sure you just hadn't come to your attention or you wouldn't put up with it. Because, you know, I know about government, and we're equal, okay, and this isn't fair. And I wrote the letter all out, you know, and then I thought, before I mailed it, I thought, you know, if I get a bunch of people to sign this thing, it's going to have more impact than if just my name's on it. Had no idea what a petition was. So I went to school, and Frank B. John Elementary School, and I got, I think there was, you know, in memory, I don't know, but a lot of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, 6th graders signed that thing for me. I had pages and pages, and I put it all in, and my parents got the address for the president for me, and I mailed it off to him. Just bringing it to his attention, knowing he would change it just like that.
If he just knew.
If he knew, you know, because it was America, for God's sake, and we should all be able to play Little League if we had the God-given, beautiful right to pitch that I did. I got a form letter back, and I didn't keep it. I didn't know we were going to be talking about it 108 years later, or I'd have kept it. But yeah, and my grandmother is responsible for that too. And you know, when I was 4, my grandmother, I went to her and I said there was a kid that was having a really hard time in school. I mean, she was coming to school with no sweater or anything. It was cold. It was North Carolina. It was winter. And I asked Ma, I said, Ma, how come God lets some people be rich with too much of everything and some people be poor and cold and hungry? I don't understand that. And Ma looked at me and she paused, like Socrates, and she said, well, Linda, she said, do you think God works like Santa through elves at night? And I stopped and I thought about that. I said, no, I don't think so. And he said, nope. She said, nope, he doesn't. He said, he works through you and me. And he counts on us, if we see something wrong going on, he counts on you and me to fix it, okay? Because if you see something wrong, it's not God's doing, it's our doing. And he counts on you and me to fix it. She said, God gave you a good brain, Linda Ketner. She said, so if ever you see anything wrong, you just figure out what needs doing and get at it. And honestly, every day I think that is the cornerstone of every decision I've made in my life that's important. I really do.
Well, it's a strong lesson to learn early on.
Well, it tells you that you're powerful, okay? It tells you you have responsibility. It tells you don't look to somebody else to get it done. And it tells you you have enough intelligence to figure out. All the time I've grown up, I've heard people going, well, what should I do? What should I do? And I can hear my grandmother going, you figure out what needs doing and get at it. A lot of people let themselves off the hook by saying, well, I just don't know what to do. And particularly now I can empathize with that. The government is so whack right now. And a lot of you know I ran for Congress in 2008. It's gotten a lot worse since then. So I understand people going, I'm overwhelmed, because man, they're about to overwhelm me, and when you do that, you've done something. But the trick is, if it's an elephant you got to eat, start with one bite and just stay at it. You know, it may only be 14 bites you can get down, but it's 14 bites of that elephant that's gone. And I think she put that in me. Well, Mama says I came out of the womb with a placard, you know, which she wasn't fond of, by the way. But I do think that and my dad, watching him and his integrity and his hard work in combination, hard work and integrity, have molded me into, and it's not always easy being me, trust me, as it's not always easy being you, right?
Yep.
It's hard being us sometimes, isn't it?
What was your first foray into seeking leadership positions? Was it in high school? Was it in college? I mean, did you start early?
Charlotte Beer's book that you will all love, is it out yet?
I think, yeah, it is out. Yeah, it's on Amazon already.
I'd rather be in charge. Well, there's a quote in there she has, of all things considered, I'd rather be in charge. How many of you identify with that statement? All things considered, I'd rather be in charge. Okay, so do I. And I think, from homeroom queen or whatever they used to call them, whatever, I'd raise my hand and want to do it, you know. I just have had this. Now, it doesn't mean I can't follow. I can. But it better be a good leader. Because if it's a good leader and I can say, well, what about, and they can respond to me, I'm fine following. But in the absence of a good leader, I'm going to try to get her done. You know, I really am. I'm going to try to get it done. And I think that's temperamental, don't you? I don't know. You're
I
like
think
that.
so. I am, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to be called bossy, and now I embrace it.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm not bossy. I'm a good leader.
Yes.
I'm a good leader, and I own it.
And proud of it.
I am proud of
Yeah.
it. So you go off to college. Then what happened?
Well, I ran for president of the freshman class. I got that.
All right. You went to UNC.
But can I go back to high school? Because
Sure.
there was a formative event then. I went to Girls State and Girls
I did
Nation.
too.
Did you?
Oh, my
I think
God.
it's, anybody else?
You must have run for
You did
office.
too? Of course I did. I was the governor and then went to Girls Nation.
I was
did you go to
lieutenant
Girls
governor.
Nation?
Yeah.
You did?
Yes.
And okay, and was next door to Jane Pauley. Hello. Well, little did I know she was going to be Jane Pauley. I was best friends with her roommate from Indiana, whose name was Pig, whose nickname I hope was Pig. So Pig and Jane were next door to us, and we had a great grand time. Okay, but Jane was kind of quiet. So you went to Girls Nation too?
Yeah.
That's when I got addicted to government. You know, that's when I really understood. And I remember coming home and just like to my grandmother about Girls State and Girls Nation and how excited I was. And she said, she looked at me and she said, Linda, she says, there are two things that worry me about you. And I said, what is that, Ma? And she says, you know, she says, you take Jesus and the Constitution a little more seriously than the rest of the people. And man, was she right.
Yeah.
Man, was she right. But yeah, I think that was formative for me. How about you? You?
I was, you know, you have a choice as to what office you run for when you're at Girls State. And I was the only girl there in 1969 that was from a private school.
Okay.
And I was looked down upon. Nobody knew what to make of me. And my roommate was from a tiny little town in South Carolina. And she was so intimidated by me because I came from the big city.
Yeah, and a private school.
That she slept with her purse under her pillow.
She thought you would steal it?
Well, who knows?
Okay.
And so I decided I didn't have the gumption to run for governor. So I decided I'd run for lieutenant governor. Who was to know that years later I'd work for the first woman who was lieutenant governor in South Carolina. So I ran for lieutenant governor. And then I got to go to Girls Nation. Now, the summer of 1969, think back, those of you who are of a certain age, there was a lot of turmoil in this country, okay? And I'm in Washington with heels, stockings, hats, gloves,
white gloves. Made us wear
and
white
dresses.
Gloves and a hat.
You wear dresses the whole time.
No pants.
And the big moment was when we got to go have lunch with Strom Thurmond. So Judy Peters from Hampton, Virginia, who was governor,
we go
trotting over to the Senate dining room.
I was in North Carolina.
And we go to have lunch with Strom Thurmond, and Nancy joins us wearing her crown. She wore her crown.
Who?
Nancy
His
Thurmond,
wife?
yes. She
wore
was
her
Miss South
crown
Carolina.
I know that.
She
To
used to wear
lunch?
it. So we're at,
She
and I
used to
to this
wear
day, didn't make this up. To this day, and I'm going to find it and frame it and put it on my wall, I have a menu from the Senate dining room that says, to Jeanette, a lovely girl, Strom Thurmond. That was my defining moment when I thought, that's how I'm perceived?
Good.
I am lieutenant governor
Hello.
of Girls State,
I'm the
South
lieutenant
Carolina.
governor.
All right, so you come off the high of Girls State, you go to college, you run for president of the freshman
Oh, we're
class.
talking me again.
Yeah.
I thought you were telling me.
No, you
sooner.
can't turn the tables on me.
But you know who I got to meet? Because my senator, we got to meet our senator.
Ooh,
our
Jesse
state.
Helms?
No, I don't. No, Sam Ervin, the head of the Watergate Commission, was mine. Okay, so I one-upped you on that.
But there's something out there in the internet that implies that you got into things like marching when you were in college.
Yeah, yeah, I did.
And I don't mean with a band.
My mom was not happy about that either. My poor mother, God love her. My mom was not a marching kind of person, okay? And she called me and didn't get an answer because there were no cell phones. And she saw me in this poncho marching. I don't know whether it was for the war or civil rights, one or the other. And they got in the car and came to get me and take me out of school, okay? Dad was saying, leave her alone. She's marching for something she cares about, she believes in. Mom's going, drive the car, Ralph, drive the car. We got to get her out of here. And so they came and they tried to take me out of school because they thought I just kind of lost it. And I said, you know, I'm not going. And I didn't. And I don't know. You know, there's a whole lot that goes on with those kind of moments. Did you ever have anything like that where your parents...
I was a late bloomer.
You were a late bloomer?
Yeah.
I was
my
an early
rebellion
bloomer.
was to join the Peace Corps and go to Afghanistan.
That counts.
But that was later.
That
later
counts.
in life, you know. But so let's get through college.
Yeah.
Because you had a corporate career, and I don't think
did.
a lot of people understand that as we can appreciate how corporate can be. What was your first job out of college?
Let me see. Center for Creative Leadership.
Okay.
Which is a think tank on leadership in Greensboro, sponsored by the Richardson Merrill Foundation. And I worked there when I was getting my graduate degree and afterward. Wait a minute. I think I worked for Food Lion between my undergraduate
According to
and
your
graduate.
resume, you did.
Thank you. Just keep me posted.
And Smith Klein.
That was before my graduate degree? No. Smith Klein was after my graduate degree.
Okay.
But Food Lion was before. So my dad started Food Lion, and I worked there for not long, a couple of years, and loved it. Best boss I ever had was my dad. And no, that was after graduate school too, because I got to do all the training and organization development stuff for them. And Dad was so great. He'd come in and he'd go, I'd go, Dad, let's do this. And I'd spell out what I wanted to do, and he'd say, how much does it cost? And I'd tell him how much because I was smart enough to cost it out before I got there. Tell him how much it cost. When will you return that investment? Gave him a date, and man, he held it to me. And what results, what outcomes are you going to get specifically as a result of this investment? And I'd give him what it was, and he'd say, go. And he'd let me do it. And God, that's exciting to have the freedom to think and be responsible. For a 26-year-old kid, it was a little bit heady. But I was very entrepreneurial myself, so I didn't want to work for Dad. That kind of bothered me, to work for your daddy. Okay. So I went out, and I think the Center for Creative Leadership was next, and then Smith Klein.
Right.
I went to work in Philadelphia for Smith Klein, the pharmaceutical company, which has several other names now. I can't remember them all. And I was responsible for organization development, first for both world and then U.S. And world, training and development, organization development. Yeah.
Question that I'm asking everybody. So for that job or any of your jobs, did you negotiate for salary?
God, when I got my bachelor's degree, I taught for a year, high school, at Sophronia M. Tompkins High School, home of the Marching Wolverines, okay, in Savannah, Georgia. And the only reason I had 2 job offers, one was from Charleston, one was from Savannah, Georgia. That damn old bridge scared the hell out of me. I couldn't get over it. So I took the job in Savannah. Plus, Savannah was going to pay me $400 more a year, $6,800 a year, okay? So I taught at Sophronia M. Tompkins High School, home of the Marching Wolverines, for $6,800 a year. When I entered the corporate world and they started talking about the money they were going to pay me, I felt like I'd won the lottery. So when I first got the job, I didn't negotiate. And then when I found out what my colleagues were making, yeah, we sat down and had a talk about it.
Was that hard?
No.
Okay.
No. Was it hard for you?
Well, I was so grateful to be offered a job.
Well, yeah,
that
I get that.
I took it. And then my first job, 3 years later, I found out that the 2 men who'd been hired at the same time doing the same job were being paid twice what I was.
Bingo.
And when I brought it to the attention of my boss, he said, well, I'm not going to give you a raise. You'll always be a secondary income. You're going to get married and a man will take care of you.
And you said,
I quit.
did you?
But
Good
this
for
isn't about
you.
me. Go back to your job at Smith
Well,
Klein.
I mean, this is, I'm talking about Smith Klein now, and again, we can edit some of this, but back in those days, well, okay, let's go to the Center for, oh gosh, okay, I'm not naming any places, I'm just going to talk about some people I met along the way. This was the 70s, and it was different, let me tell you, and there were no laws to protect you. My first day at one place, okay, I walk in and I'm supposed to meet the boss of the boss of the boss of the boss, the head boss, okay? And I walk in and I sit down, and I had been doing part-time work for him, so I had been to several social events, which was part of what they did. And I sit down, and he says to me, well, we're so glad to have you, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And I said, well, I am so happy to be here, I'm so excited. And he said, so, are you going to sleep with me? Seriously, seriously. And I sat there, and I'm 25 or 26 years old at the time, and I went, no. I said, do I still have a job? He said, yes. I said, I think I'll go now. And I did. And then another company that I worked for, very large, again in the 70s when they can still do this kind of thing. There were comments like, she's on the rag, that sort of thing, constantly. That you just... At that point,
you just
you
had
swallowed.
to let it roll over.
It didn't occur to you to do something about it then, except manage it. Did it? Did it to you? You just managed it.
Being called honey.
Oh, good Lord, yeah. And when I went to work in the Northeast, which Philadelphia really doesn't qualify, but they thought they were, for Smith Klein, everybody thought Southern women were stupid. Well, that just, you know how that went over. You can. Those of you who know me, that didn't go over too very well.
Let's get you to Charleston, because I think it's important to
okay.
move forward. You've been here 29 years, you mentioned. You're a Charlestonian.
28 and a half.
28 and a half
no,
years.
I'm not a Charlestonian.
28 and a half years ago, Charleston was blessed by the fact that you came here. And I mean that.
Thank
now,
you,
what
dear.
brought you here?
It's beautiful. God, it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life. When I get out on my boat in the marsh, I am closer to God than anywhere on this earth, you know. I love the people. I hate the politics. It's just gorgeous. And then when I got to know a little bit about Mayor Riley and knew his vision of the city and what he wanted to do here and how it was really going to be different than other places in South Carolina, I couldn't resist it. I could not resist it. It was between here and Boston. Because at that point I was flying. It was before I got sick and had to stay put for a while. And I was flying everywhere. So any place that had an airport was up for grabs. I'd started my own company by then with my partner. And it was Boston or here. And I spent a winter in Boston. That pretty much wrapped that up. That was done. I was done with that.
I have to tell y'all, if you see Linda's resume, and it's hard to sort of get all the pieces because I think it would be overwhelming.
It's a quilt.
But there are very few charitable and nonprofit organizations in this community that have not been touched by Linda's talent, her time, and your generosity.
Thank you.
And what I want to know, and I think all of us want to know, is how did you get into that? You know, you move here, it's a beautiful city, you meet Joe Riley, you say, okay, this is a place that I want to work to improve, I want to be a part of it. How did you do that?
Well, my first passion here was homelessness. And I got involved with that very shortly after I moved here. I'd been involved with that in Greensboro, where I'd lived formerly. And, you know, they had just started the shelter.
Mm-hmm. Crisis Ministries.
Crisis Ministries.
What became that, yeah.
Yeah. And so I got neck deep involved with that, with Alan Houghton and all the original people who had such passion to make sure that nobody, and the mayor did too, nobody sleeps on the streets of Charleston unless they choose to. And I got very passionate about that. And that was my first, I work better if I'm focused. So it'll look like she's going from this to that, but she's not. She's just like a laser beam on the housing issue, and then a laser beam on the LGBT issue, laser beam on politics. It's like I work better if I can just get real focused on something.
Well, it's race relations, it's homelessness, it's the Center for Women. It is all over every issue that falls under that magnificent umbrella that we can call social justice.
That is why I was put on this planet. I am absolutely certain of it. And my grandmother made absolutely certain of it. You know, each of you in your own head know why you were put on this planet by now. If you're over 45, my guess is. If you're under 45, you may still be wondering. But if you're over 45, you probably pretty much either have a hint or know damn well why you were put on this planet. And that one's mine.
So talk about the all
Not
of
just
it.
social justice, social action. You can't just
exactly.
care about it, you got to do something about it. Figure out what needs doing and get at it.
You have started several major organizations that have had a huge impact. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
Specifically AFA and the Equality Coalition. And I also want to ask you if you will talk a little bit about the decision you made when you were here to come out.
Okay. First of all, let me say, if I'm going to put on my tombstone, the Housing Trust Fund bill's got to be right up there.
Okay.
We were 49th in the United States for state participation in making sure that everybody had a decent, affordable place to live. 68,000 people, when we started this bill, got their water from a creek in this state. 68,000 people. Met a lot of them. They're little. They're cold. They're trying to do their homework with 3 coats on and the wind whipping through holes in the house and no heat. And there's a bucket where they're supposed to go to the bathroom. Met a whole lot of them. Didn't sit well with me. So we studied, we being a conglomeration of everybody that was involved with any part of poverty and housing. We all came together and we studied what bill most would be like Charleston, be like South Carolina, that we might have a chance of getting passed in South Carolina. We picked a bill in Tennessee. Long story short, we studied it for a year, got the right bill, got the thing together with the right language, got 4,000 people to start writing the State House, going to the State House, calling their legislatures. We did creative things like bright pink, glow-in-the-dark postcards so that they couldn't ignore it was just a postcard. It was one that glowed in the dark.
That was sent to the members of the legislature?
Yeah, members of the legislature. Okay, and we went for months. We showed up there every day, and we walked and we talked and all that. To make a long story short, we got it through the House, which was really hard. The Senate was easier. And Carol Campbell was governor, and Carol Campbell, we got it through the House. We'd worked our fannies off on this, and we had sold it as an economic development bill because it turns out we were losing $11 for every dollar we put into it from the federal government because we weren't doing anything. And we also had $12.8 million to offer private industry each year. So we sold it as an economic bill because it was a Republican House and Senate. And then the governor said he would veto it. And I got a call that said, Governor Campbell's going to veto it. Well, now his wife lives next door to my mother, and while he was alive, he did too. So I'm going to be very careful what I say. But anyway, I sent a message back, and I said, please tell the governor, when I got the message that he was going to veto it, that, God, that just breaks my heart. Because I was going to build a guest house on my property, and it was going to cost me $250,000, and now I'm not gonna, and it just aggravates me. He could stop it if he wanted to, and they said, what do you mean what does that got to do with the governor? And this was his assistant, Mark, somebody, I can't remember his name, somebody right next to me. And I said, well, I'm going to have to take that $250,000, and I said, wait a minute. I said, okay, I've got all the TV prices that cover the state now, because we've been doing some ads. Oh, God. Yeah, this will do it. I said, for 3 months, we can run primetime ads. The kinder, gentler Carol Campbell isn't so kind or gentle, and he's going to take X amount of dollars out of people's pocketbook. And they said, are you threatening the governor? And I said, no, I'm sort of promising the governor, not threatening the governor. And he said, this is not funny. And I went, I ain't laughing. And so he said, I will be back in touch with you. I said, okay. So I got a call the next day. The governor would like to see you. And I went, okay, when would he like to see me? And today. Can you come at 2 o'clock or whatever? Or the next day, I can't remember. So I show up, and I'm led into, and you know all these places because you work there. Yeah. This Mark guy again, and there's this huge table that would seat like 45.
The governor's conference room. It's where the Budget and Control Board meet.
Is it? Mm-hmm. I don't know, but that's where they put me by myself. And Mark goes, I'll inform the governor you're here, whatever. And I'm sitting there with this long thing. And I'm only like, I'm young then, okay? Much younger than today. And I'm sitting in this room going, wow, I'm scared, okay? And so Mark comes back, and he said, the governor has been detained. But let me ask you some questions. He said, you know, you understand that the governor is not happy with your response to this. And I said, oh, yeah, I got that loud and clear. That's clear. And he said, and the governor wants to know if you're serious with this threat. I said, I prefer to call it a promise. I really do. And it's not a threat. It really is a promise. And I really want that guest house. Truly, I do. So could we work something out? And then I went over all the economic. I said, if the governor will take credit for all these economic development things, it's going to look good on him. Because he had just done something. I can't remember what it was, but they were referring to him as not the kinder, gentler George Bush kind of stuff. And I said, this is going to make him look really good, because he can do good for poor people and also do good for the economy. Right. The phone rings. Did they have that bugged, that room?
Probably.
Because the phone rang. And Mark says, whoever Mark is, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And he hangs up. And he says, I'm so sorry, the governor's not going to be able to meet with you, blah, blah, blah. This is May something. So I leave. And then June 6th, he has until June 6th to, what do you call it?
Veto.
Veto it. Okay. So we're all sweating. He hadn't done anything. And on June the 3rd, I'm working in Atlanta, and I get a call in Atlanta saying the governor wants to know whether you want to come to the signing ceremony. He's going to sign the bill. And I went, I can't. I'm working. But please tell him thank you so much. Mm-hmm. And then the press happened, and he talked about all the economic development. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. A little guy that I met named Matt, who had been going to the bathroom in a green bucket and emptying it into a creek, now got warm, got a bathroom, and it has made his college. He's already graduated from college since that happened. So who cares? That I want on my tombstone.
And that propelled you into an even bigger arena.
What was that?
Well, I'm looking at the South Carolina Equality Coalition and AFA and all the work that you have done in terms of the LGBT community.
Yeah.
Your own decision to come out.
Yep.
In a state where that could be dangerous.
People were telling me that was not a smart thing to do.
What prompted that?
Integrity. I lived the rest of my life with integrity. And integrity isn't always easy. If it's easy for you, God love you. You're a much better person than I am. I have to have rules about integrity, or I'll go astray. You know, I'll take the easy way. Okay, I really will. And the easy way, I love Scott Peck's book. How many of you read Road Less Traveled?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's a really important book to me. When I was trying to learn how to live, I used to go along the Battery Wall. I think I was in my early 40s. And I go, delay gratification, accept responsibility, dedicate myself to the truth, achieve balance. And I'd say it over and over and over and over. Because I'm not by nature a very good person. I'm really not. I have to work at it. But one thing I have always pretty much had is integrity. I'll tell you the truth, mm-hmm. and I'll live from my truth. And here I was at age 40-something, lying about my sexual orientation. And I'd already made peace with God about it, which was not a long or easy process for me. And I worked hard on it, and I read deeply about it. But I'd come to resolution that God loved me just the way I was. And my partner at the time, who I'd been with for 10 years, told me, you know, it's off if you come out. I'm not going to do it. And that was part of the issue. And then I don't want to go into, there were some issues why I had to leave that relationship that were painful. And I got into a relationship, a very important relationship to me, where we could have lost her daughter mm-hmm. if I had come out. And I'm going, why, God? I mean, this is just, and then the little girl's father died, so it was no longer an issue. And my partner then and I made the decision to live with integrity, and part of it was because we wanted to have that little girl and her brother never be ashamed about our love or our family or whatever. And so, man, when I came out, I came all the way out. And what happened was we called everybody at her school. She was going to Montessori, okay? And we had told her, and she was 4 at the time, Montessori. We didn't anticipate this. And she goes, I can't wait to get to school to tell everybody that Kat and my mom are getting married. She called me Kat. And we went, uh-oh, forgot that. Uh-oh. So we got on the phone that night. She took half the Montessori phone book. I took the other half. We called every parent and every administrator at Montessori and just said, we're asking for your support. And if you need to think about it, we understand, but could you kind of think about it with a kind of open mind until you decide? They all said yes, okay? And so then we're like pulling our hair out at the end of the night because it's like 10 o'clock, we've called everybody, and then I go, there are people I have known in this town for XDX years now who don't know, and when they hear this from the Montessori parents. So we made these lists of everybody we knew, including the mayor. You know, I went to the mayor right away because I didn't want him to hear it. He and I worked on a lot of projects together. I loved him. And I didn't want him to be the last one to hear it. So I am having breakfast come out meetings, lunch come out meetings, coffee come out meetings, letters, before email, okay? And I'm coming out like as fast as I can. If I could put it in the New York Times, I would have. And just asking, you know, people to hear me from where I was coming from. And, you know, I got to tell you, because people that I love told me, don't do it. Alan Houghton, whom I dearly love, he said, you won't be able to make the kind of impact you've made on the things that are important to you, race and homelessness, if you come out. And I respected his opinion. But I could not live out of personal integrity. So I was scared, and I've said before, and I mean it, I didn't know when I did that whether I knew I was jumping off a cliff, but I didn't know whether the ground was 8 feet or 8,000 feet below where, but I had to jump off that cliff. And, you know, I've said this too, and it's true, that when I stepped off that cliff, the last thing I expected is that I'd soar, and that's what happened.
I think there's no question that your impact since then has been even
so.
greater
I hope so.
than
People
it was
have felt
beforehand.
more.
And I think it is your integrity. It comes across. It is so obvious. And you have gone
Well, thank
on
you.
to do so many wonderful things in the community. And instead of, you know, you could have come out and then just sort of retreated.
No, you have to talk about it. Once you
Au
come out.
contraire. No, you got out there and got even, and AFA, I want you to talk about starting AFA.
Oh, man.
Tell us about that.
That's something I'm proud of, too. So, right after I came out, I went to LGLA, which is a meeting thing there. And they met at the back of Ryan's.
Acronym.
Lesbian and Gay, Low Country Lesbian and Gay Association.
Okay.
Because it's the only thing going in town then. And they were meeting in the back of Ryan's, and there were 13 people there, and they all looked like their dog died. And I went, whoa, this is not good. This is not good. This is not healthy. This is not affirming. This is not good. And they were all kind of like, woe is me, and they were telling like sad, it was like a very sad AA meeting, I think. I haven't been to one, but if I keep getting wine, I might need to go to one. But, you know, I thought this is not good. And I had spent lots of years dealing with the spiritual part of this, all of it. And I thought, no, this is not good enough. And so I asked around, because I didn't know any gay people. I'd been in the closet deeper than a garment bag, you know. I mean, I was way up in the closet. So I asked people that knew gay people, who were mostly straight people, to tell me the 5 people that they knew, or as many people as they knew, that had spirituality. I didn't care whether it was Buddhist or whatever it was. Spirituality, emotional health, integrity, and an activist kind of mentality. And so I took a bunch of names, and I had lunch with all of them, and we ended up with, and this is, I believe this is just divine, we ended up with the first AFA board members who were 8 of the finest people on this planet, and they helped create a healthy, good, anchored, and man, it's just gone like, you know, now.
And to explain the acronym.
Alliance for Full Acceptance.
Exactly.
Yeah, nothing less. You know, people since then have said, well, Charleston's so good about gay people because you know, the nation's changed or whatever. I said, go to Greenville. That's who we were like before AFA. Mm-hmm. Charleston's different because, yes, we do have more artists and stuff, but AFA has done the work.
Exactly.
And what we've seen that just makes my heart soar is that my godchild, his birthday was today. His parents credit me, Heather and Joan, credit me with the strength to have that baby. And so they made me his godmother. And what could be better than that? And the life that those 2 boys, now there are 2 of them, are living because they have the strength to love those children like that. It just fills me up.
I'm going to divert you a little bit, okay?
I'm easily diverted.
The referendum.
Which one?
On gay marriage. Which
oh,
one?
God.
Should we talk about which one? That particular one, the referendum on whether gay marriage would be allowed in the state of South Carolina.
That hurt.
And you created a statewide organization that was amazing in terms of its outreach.
Yeah.
Any comments about that?
We did it 2 years before, and I had a hard time talking the AFA board into it, to tell you the truth, because we're a C3, which is education, AFA is. And they didn't want a statewide organization. I said, we got to have a C4, there's an amendment coming. And they didn't believe me, you know. And I said, there is an amendment coming here. And I said, we need a C4 that's political, that can deal with it. Anyway, so we made it happen, and we fought hard. But, you know, this is a tough state around things like a lot of things, right? A lot of things. So we lost badly. But what we did in the process is develop organizations in Greenville, in Aiken, in 6 Mile, you know. So, I mean, we used that opportunity to develop a statewide participation. So it wasn't a loss, it was just a setback.
And not too long after that, you decided to run for Congress.
Yeah.
What insanity provoked that?
That's a darn good question. You know, it was not possible for a woman in the state that had fewer elected women than any state in the Union, a Democrat, there are only like 4 of us that meet in a phone booth who are Democrat, and an openly lesbian candidate. But you know what? I do what my knowing tells me to do. And when I had this knowing, I went, are you kidding me? I really did. I just had this knowing. Part of it was I would have done that had I been straight. I would have done it a long time ago, and I would have won, okay? And I'd have been governor, and they'd have been playing Little League Baseball a long time ago. But part of that had come into my consciousness, that there was some part of me that was still afraid of my sexual orientation because I was born to run for office. I cared that much about all of us and the Constitution, the way it is really meant, about equality under the law and all the rest of it. And that was bugging me. I was going through that in my head. And then I thought, I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell. I really didn't. Everybody knew that. But I had a knowing I was supposed to do it. And I don't mess with the knowing. Y'all get knowings? Y'all get knowing? Don't mess with the knowing. Just do it. So off I go. And the Democratic Party didn't even want me. You know, they really didn't until some of the polls started coming in and they were going like, doot, 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 doot. They really were. And I still can't figure out what it was about. I know I'll know before it's over, but I got 48% of the vote. I outperformed, I think, McCain and Obama. I think they split with some third-party candidate. Anyway, who knows what that was about? But I got a feeling we'll find out. I don't know what it's about. But I was led to do that for some reason.
So what can we do to get more women to run?
You know what?
And get elected.
Put on your big girl panties and, you know, seriously, you need it, all of us who have the integrity, who have the desire, who have the knowing that this can and should be a better place. And I look around and you know, we were talking early and you and I were talking early, and you're all doing it in very many ways. We must have political change, folks. We must. We've got to. And I'm looking at each and every one of you. I am a lesbian Democrat female who got 48% of the vote. Don't tell me you can't do it. Don't tell me you can't do it. I didn't have time either. You don't either, okay? You don't have time. I didn't have time. You don't have the strength to deal with all the nasty stuff that comes, and trust me, it comes. You know, I asked for a raincoat to let that stuff slide off me, because I take all that stuff personally. Do you?
Oh, yeah.
I do. I mean, and I got it. I got the raincoat, because it was ugly, all right? And I got the raincoat, and it rolled right off of me. So stop going like that. You should run, you should run. Run. Every time women run and win, you see better state government or federal government. There's study after study to prove it. And don't say, no, yeah, you should. I'm talking you. I know you're busy with, I know, and you're doing good stuff. But figure out when you're going to run and what you're going to run for, and then do it. And then some of us have a little bit more time on our hands right now, Mary, I know what you're going through, so I'm not even going to look at you. I'm looking at you. Some of us have a little more time, and we've done stuff in the background. You now need to run. You now need to run. The quality of this state is largely a result of the lack of women in government. And there isn't a soul in here that couldn't do a better job than 2/3 of the people that are there, and you know it and I know it. When I had the knowing, I spent 1 year studying everything in detail. You have no idea. I stayed up till 1 o'clock at night before I even announced that I was even thinking about running to study how do we fix this? Because, you know, figure out what needs doing and get at it was in the back of my head. Do you know I have now every man who is asking me for money, and there are a ton of them, are my endorsement. I write them back and say, tell me how you're going to fix this, 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 and this, and then I'll consider. Do you know not one of them has studied these issues? They're running based on baloney, air. They haven't studied. They don't have solutions. They don't even understand the problem, much less what they would do about it. Demand, y'all, until you're ready to run, demand people tell you what they're, show me you've studied and show me you have at least an idea of how to attack this. Because most of them just are running like they're getting most popularity as a senior superlative, which is obscene. Yeah. But thank you for noticing that, because I did. I worked hard to figure out what I would do.
And it showed, and it's obvious when you talk about men who run for the legislature, they don't for a minute question whether they're qualified.
None, no.
We will. Yep. We will say, oh, I'm not qualified. I don't know anything about
That's right.
state issues. I don't know anything. But like you're saying, you learn about it. But even then, you can learn on the job.
Absolutely.
You have the good sense to say, I want to make a difference and I'm willing to get in there and work to learn.
That's right.
I know everybody needs a tiny break, so I want to, before we go into Q&A, have you got a motto?
Figure out what it needs doing and get at it.
Excellent.